time is 6:02. Board members that are present are Mrs. Blackshear, Mrs. Cheney, Mr. Stevens, Ms. Shirley Stokes, and myself, Isaac Rouse, and Superintendent Dixon. May we stand for a pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under
God, liberty and justice for all. We have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Give me a moment. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda for January 26, 2021 BOE work session. Can I get a motion on that?
I move that motion. I second.
The motion has been properly made by Ms. Blackshear and seconded by Ms. Cheney. Approve the agenda for January 26, 2021 BOE work session. The question at this time. All in favor, I know you by the word aye or raising your hand.
Aye. Aye.
Nay.
Did I get one nay?
Yes. I didn't get the minutes, so I don't know what the minutes even said.
So you didn't have a copy, you don't have a copy of the agenda?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Mr. Rouse,
Yes, sir.
would you clarify for her that we're dealing with the agenda and not the minutes?
I asked her if you get a copy of the agenda. She said no, she didn't. So, yeah, we're all in favor. Carried. 4 to 1. Next, we have the exit statement by Mrs. Teresa Blackshear.
Thank you. In accordance with regulations set forth by the Georgia Ethics Commission, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflicts of interest and interest of such conflict. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest or appearance that's on our agenda for tonight? Seeing none, we will proceed with our agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Blackshear. Next on the agenda, it says the business agenda part, but Mr. Dixon, do you have any statement, Mark, you want to make?
Yes, sir, Mr. Rouse. Thank you, Chairman Rouse and Ms. Vice Chair Blackshear. Very brief comments. We did start back with our in-person learning on Monday. We've had a very good opening for these past 2 days. We want to encourage those that signed up to return back to in-person learning to come on and get aboard with us. This train is moving. And those that are supposed to be learning virtually, we want to make sure that you are logging on and that learning is continuous. We appreciate all of our stakeholders and for the support, and we solicit your continued thoughts and your prayers for our staff, our students, as well as our stakeholders and our community. This is a very trying time, and it's a day-by-day journey, but we appreciate all of the support that is being given unto us. Thank you, Chairman Rouse.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. First on the business agenda is student achievement and virtual attendance update information to principals.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Rouse. As I present to you the principles that we'll be presenting, we wanted to talk about, because we've had so much time that was away from the brick and mortar building, we wanted to present some data to you as relates to student achievement and student attendance, because we understand that there's a direct correlation between student attendance and student achievement. And we have been out of our pockets of face-to-face instruction, and it's a task. It's a humongous task to get students to log on, to get the cooperation that we need sometimes. And so at this time, we're going to start with our Jeffersonville Elementary School principal, Ms. Reese Jenkins, and she will give us a presentation at this time, a brief presentation at this time, and then we will be followed with a presentation by Mr. Jamal Harris, our middle high school principal, following Ms. Reese Jenkins. Ms. Reese Jenkins, it's in your hands.
Well, thank you, Mr. Dixon. It has been an incredible journey. There's no greater way to be introduced to being a new principal than to go through it in the midst of COVID. Thank you, Mr. Bassett, for getting the presentation. And so to our families, I just want to say thank you for allowing those students to come back into our building. I'm going to take us back from August up until present day so that our newest board members and our community are aware of this journey and how we began and where we are. And so if we look at JES by the numbers, I want to say that we started off in August in a virtual learning atmosphere. Our students have become somewhat accustomed to it, but our teachers were thriving and they were making sure that our students, all 328 of them, were learning. We had about a 75% total number of students that we could say were truly participating. And we were constantly calling families, encouraging them to meet us online. We were giving parent orientations. We were doing everything that we could, along with partnering with technology to make sure that we got technology in their hand to make sure that our students were learning. We got into September and we had made it into about 3 weeks of in-person learning. And then, of course, that was brought to an abrupt halt. But nevertheless, we went back to our virtual learning environment and we were extremely excited. We did notice that we were seeing a decline in student attendance. At that point in November, we were looking at about 60% of our students who were showing up, who were actively participating. And we thought at JES it was time to do something a little bit different. And so board members and community, this is when the initial letter went out. And that letter was just informing us how important it was for us to come back to learning. Even though we were in a virtual learning atmosphere, we sent out that notice that talked about how important attendance was and how valuable it was for us to meet our teachers there so that we could have that meaningful learning experience. Unfortunately, we sent it out to 50 students in November. And then in December, we realized that we still had some parents and students who were struggling with meeting us in our virtual world where learning was happening, teachers were there, students were engaged. And so we sent out about 33 additional letters. 50 of them had gone out in November, 33 more went out in December, and it was our second notice. At this point, we talked about what the law said. We gave our parents more information about it is a responsibility for us as a community to make sure that our students are learning. And our virtual learning was where it was happening. And I will say that started a lot of conversations and families started calling and talking about some of the challenges. And we were all excited to come back in January to have an in-person learning experience. I talked about November and I talked about December, and you're going to hear me go back to October. And I'm going back to October because I want to address something that happened along the way. In October, we decided, along with some conversations with our parents and of course our students and teachers, that it was important for us to give everybody an opportunity to thrive. And so we halted sending out a report card. We made a decision that we would send out a progress report. And so we halted sending out a report card in October. We said we would send out a progress report, and we did send out a progress report. That progress report that went out only went out to students who was failing 1 or more classes. Those students who were thriving, we were celebrating them and exciting, but we were still trying to ensure that all of our students were able to get on the right track. The note in October, the letter that went out, indicated that we would send out our report cards in January. And then, of course, unfortunately, we were back at home, and so we were not in our traditional learning atmosphere. We are going to send out a report card, and this is why I jumped from November to December to October, because I know some of you may be at home looking at that letter. We are going to send out a report card. It is coming out next week, so just bear with us, please. And we're going to let you know how our students have progressed from August up until now. This is going to be a report card that's going to be recorded, and of course, all this information is going to be available to our families. And so that was kind of our attendance challenge, but I want to talk about some facts about JES. I don't know if you remember, but we were meeting here almost every single week with our Thursday Thunder. And we were telling you about how fast COVID-19 was changing our world. And we were doing this every single week because we wanted to be transparent to our families. And we have continued to do that at Jeffersonville Elementary School. At Jeffersonville Elementary School, we also created a 3 Before Me. And so you may have been wondering, families, why is everybody from JES calling me? And it is because our families would first talk to our students. Our teachers would talk to our students. And then our teachers would talk to the parents, and then the guidance counselor would call, and then of course you would hear from one of us in administration. And that was our 3 Before Me approach, so everybody stayed in constant communication. We also developed an accountability approach, and so while our teachers did a phenomenal job, even today, 98% of them, we did have a new baby along the way, so 98% of them was there every single day, making sure that our students could learn from the best of the best, and I thank our teachers for that. But our accountability approach was that if a teacher was going to be out, there was going to be an adult that met you in the learning environment. And so that's where you may have seen our media specialists, you may have seen our media assistants, you may have even seen one of us there to make sure that our students was able to see a live person every single day that they had online learning. We also established a student of the week because we wanted our students to feel like school was school. And no matter where you were, we were going to celebrate the fact that they were coming to school, that they were completing their work, and that they were also being great stewards in our classroom. We also made home visits because we still were contending with some parents and students who were not coming to school, but we wanted to let them know that we were willing to do anything we could. And that means coming out to their homes, inviting them back into the learning experience and telling them that we're doing the best that we can and kind of helping them get through this journey. We also did edgenuity training. And so when we first went back to the virtual learning, we had 3 different opportunities for parents to come and have edgenuity training. It was with myself, of course, my assistant principal, our counselor, and we partnered with our parent engagement coordinator, Ms. Sampson, to make sure that parents were aware of the training and was able to join us in class. We also had Staff Spirit Week, and we were doing everything we could to make school feel like school, even though it was in some of our homes. We did a drive-through book giveaway. We had an ice cream social where students could come out and get 2-for-1 ice cream. We did 12 days of the holiday break. We did a drive-through with holiday packets so our students could continue to learn while they were home. And then most recently, we just created a COVID-19 hotline where you could call at any time to let us know if something happened over the weekend, you got a positive test. We didn't want you to feel the pressures of having to wait till Monday to communicate with us. We provided that hotline so that you could call us at any time to let us know. We've done some great things at Jeffersonville Elementary School. In addition to that, as we talk about JES by the facts, we want to talk about some safety practices that are there at our school, and just to let you know that we're looking forward to your child coming back to school. We're definitely social distancing there. Students have breakfast in the classroom every single morning. They come in, they go into the classroom, and they have their breakfast. For lunch, we're kind of staggering the approach of who goes into the cafeteria. Right now, our pre-K students and our kindergarten students are actually going into the cafeteria, and we will stagger that approach along the way to make sure that everybody gets to enjoy our cafeteria, but that we do it in a safe way. We have sanitation stations throughout the school, so if you drive up and drop your kid off, you're noticing that we're sanitizing before we go in. That same thing is happening at the bus ramp, and then when they get into their classroom, we are making sure that there's sanitizer that's available to them all day long, as well as endless wipes and masks, additional masks, and just in case theirs get a little soggy from the constant communicating in class, because they are responding to those teachers. We have hydration stations. We have water throughout campus, even though our water fountains are off, so that kids can still be hydrated as they're learning. We just recently received no-touch digital thermometers. That means that, when a kid comes in, they don't have to worry about someone touching them or putting the little thermometer to their head. So we do this at the drop-off in the morning, but when they come into the building, we have several places where they can go and they put their heads up to the meters, and it tells them if their temperature is appropriate for school. And then we have assigned Chromebooks so that constant touching is not occurring. You've heard Mr. Dixon talk so candidly about what we're doing with our resources. And every time one of those computers come into that building, we're making sure that our students get their very own. And so there's no mishandling or cross-contamination there. We have assigned seats, and then we have staggered bus dismissal. And so we're doing everything that we can to remain safe. Our students have to wear masks when they're on campus. Our faculty wears masks. And I would just say anybody who's thinking about if they should come back, if you've thought really hard, we are calling you to make sure that you know that it is safe for us for you to return. But stop thinking and send that baby to school. If you'll take me to my next slide, Mr. Basler. And I just want to say this, delightedly, when we opened school on yesterday, we had 237 students who came on campus. They took a chance with us, and we're going to remain safe in the process. We are still working on teaching and learning what's happening. If you went to our Facebook page today, we showed you a snippet of what happens on our campus every single day. We allowed our students to take their mid-year benchmark because we got to have some data on how our students are progressing so that when it's time to have those conversations in February about what happens next, everybody has some true data to reflect on how our students have accelerated and even how our students have regressed. If your child is still at home, we're still calling you. We call students, parents every single day, encouraging them to come back. If you were absent on yesterday, you know that we call you to see what's going on, make sure that our families are fine. If you're on virtual, today was a wonderful day for you. I want to say that our third grade team had 100% of their students who logged into our virtual learning. If you're still trying to figure out how to get there, you can call us. Our phone is always on. We are always answering because we want you to know that we're available to you and to our families. And then we also have planned home visits that are coming up for those students who have not shown up. We're not leaving any child behind. And we just want to say as a JES family that we thank you for all those that sent the 237 students to school. And we're coming to get our 83 other students who are either virtual or trying to figure out what to do next. And so that's just our JES stories. New board members, we are so delighted. We'll keep moving forward. Learning will continue to happen. And anytime you're near, please stop by and see us. It's one of the best schools in Tweeds County.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins.
Oh, one more thing, Mr. Dixon. I'm sorry, one more thing. I have to remind people that we're still that school that had a 10-point gain. Our students have not taken their milestone test again. They will do that in the month of April, but we still have something to celebrate. Just 18 months ago, we were like shouting from the rooftops that we made 10 points gains and our CCRPI score went up. We are still that school. So you need to send your students back so that we can keep on working on driving those numbers up. So I just want to tell that story, and remember, we're still wearing that 10-point game t-shirt. Thank you, Mr. Dixon.
Thank you, Ms. Rise. Sometimes I call her Ms. Rise because everything is rising where Ms. Reese Jenkins is. So we're very excited about everything that's happening at JES. And as you can tell, there are a lot of things that we're trying to do to make sure that, first of all, that your students, our scholars, are safe and that learning is taking place. So that was a lot within that presentation, but we've got to tell our own story. So board members, I would ask if you have any questions for Ms. Jenkins, we will entertain those questions at this time. If not, we will move on to Mr. Harris. Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Wonderful presentation. Mr. Jamal Harris. Your mic is off.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. To the board chair, vice chair, and esteemed board members, I greet you tonight from Tweeds County Middle High School. It is indeed a pleasure to present and be before you tonight And I want to just give you a snapshot of what's going on in regards to Twiggs County Middle High School student attendance from August to December of 2020. All right, this first slide here, I just want to talk about the methods that we use to track student attendance. Well, first, observations. Of course, was getting familiar with their students. They were noticing who was attending class, who was not attending class. As Ms. Jenkins stated, the district was fully virtual. So therefore, we did not have the students in the building. So they had to observe virtually. Another way that we tracked attendance, we also use Infinite Campus. That was where we tracked the students, whether they were logging in or not, and we used that to get their attendance. Another thing we used was Google Classroom. And Google Classroom was one of the platforms that the students were able to use, that the teachers navigated, where they had students' assignments as well as instructions for them to receive their education. The Edgenuity platform was used as a resource to the Google Classroom. We did have extensive training. Some of it was district planned, and we also had some that was school-based. We also had 2 sessions where our assistant principal, Ms. Woodley, she actually had 2 virtual sessions where she invited parents and students, and they were able to attend, and she answered any questions that students and parents had about the Edgenuity platform. It was different. We know we had some unprecedented times. Therefore, some of the parents, they needed to know how to navigate through that program. Our teachers were learning as well. So we felt the need, and we felt it very necessary to give those trainings and to make them available for parents and students. We also had the last method that we used was digital documentation, and it's available in Google Sheets and Google Forms. And we actually had surveys that we sent out. Also, we had ways to track attendance using the Google Sheets and the forms, and then we used that data to get our steps, how we will move forward. All right, now the method that we use to contact parents and guardians. The last slide told us how we tracked attendance. It was kind of in tiers. We started off with the teachers, and being that those are their students, we wanted them to assume that responsibility of their students. So we started with phone calls and texts. All of this is documented in Infinite Campus. And of course, we will not pull up Infinite Campus due to FERPA laws. We will not show those names, but it is documented in Infinite Campus where teachers have made those phone calls and texts. Teachers also used emails. They email parents, they email students directly. That's also documented in Infinite Campus. Then, we're in the technology world. Social media is very popular. So also some of the teachers use direct messages, whether it was Facebook, whether Instagram, whether it was Twitter. We tried to use every way we could to get in contact with parents. And we know in this age of social media, sometimes that's the best way that we contacted some of the parents, especially students. The next tier was support staff. And we have several that we have on our support staff, but the 2 that we used for this was Mr. Tony and Ms. Rogers. They came behind the teachers, all of those students that the parents, that the teachers were not able to reach, and parents that they couldn't reach or had problems reaching. We had them to send those names to Mr. Tony and Ms. Rogers, and they came behind them and made additional phone calls. So all the children that we missed, all the parents that we couldn't come in contact with, we backed it up with the support staff making those phone calls as well. That's documented in Google Sheets and Google Forms. And later, we will pull up that documentation. And actually, Mr. Basley, could you share the Google Forms, please? We're going to start with the middle school, and then we're going to go to the high school. All right. And if you you scroll on down, Mr. Basley, for me, please. And this is just what we sent out. This is what the teachers had to fill out. Now, here you see where it says, have parents been notified and recorded in IC? Well, you come on down, and Mr. Basley, you might have to go to where it's responses, and then it's going to give us those graphs where they can see it more clearly. And it's going to be on the same thing with the Google Forms, and it has responses to the right-hand corner. All right, right here, and we can park right here. It's kind of small for you. We did block those names out due to FERPA laws, but if you look at these categories where Mr. Basley is pulling it up, it says, does student attend class regularly? And you see the yeses and the nos. Have parents been notified? And if you see going all the way down, you see yes in that column that parents have been notified. And we also had a column where we gave the strict details about whether it was no answer, whether it was a message, what the mother or the father was saying, what the guardian was stating, but we have all that data provided in this Google sheet. Now, Mr. Basley, if you would go back to the one, it's a Google form, go to where it's responses, so they can see those pie graphs and it will be a little bit more clear for them. So if you scroll back up and go to responses, that's where you'll find that.
It didn't have the responses in there, Mr. Harris.
Okay, well, that is the pie graph, and I actually can show that, but I'll wait till the end of the presentation. It actually showed where we had 83%, and I wanted you to see those pie graphs that were not attending class regularly, and that's because virtual. So we had a hard time getting kids logging in consistently. We did all these things to call and make sure who's making those contacts. But we even talked to some parents that said, kids will log in. I'll make sure the students do daily. The next day, we still got the same thing. But from our end, we did keep constant contact. We did let them know that we were tracking that. After the support staff, we started out with the teachers. We went to support staff, and then back up teachers and support staff, administration, which includes myself and Ms. Woodley. We actually made phone calls for the ones that Mr. Tony and Ms. Rogers couldn't get in contact with, or they got a response that we felt we could get a little bit more details. We backed that up with phone calls. And on that Google sheet that Mr. Basley displayed, that is where we track that as well. So those yeses and nos, that was where we tracked all that information. We also sent letters home, and that's the attendance letter. If you can pull that up for me, please, sir. Thank you, sir. We sent this letter out, and you see it has 3 columns. Your child has been absent from school multiple days. Your child has not participated in the virtual learning experience. Your child has been tardy for class more than 3 times. We had teachers to fill this out for the students that had failing grades or weren't logging in. We sent these letters home, and we actually had a total of 173 letters that we sent home to parents. So if we put that in percentages, at that time, we had 45% of the students out of a total of 381. We had a total of 173, which was 45%, that were logging in regularly. So that's why we sent those letters home. So that's supposed to have. We had 208 students out of 381, which was 55%, who were attending class regularly. So I do want to commend that effort. I do want to congratulate the students on that, because at least we were in the higher column, which was 55% of the students who were actually logging in and receiving their instruction that way. But you see, that was definitely a problem that we were trying to tackle, but we just had a problem with the consistency of logging in. As we talk to some parents, and that can be displayed on the spreadsheet, some of it is due to having more than one child in the home, multiple children in the home, 4 or 5 maybe. So where the district did provide hotspots, the district did provide technology. Of course, we were not able to provide 5 pieces of technology. So if it was a 5-person student home, they had to work out how those students would use those devices. So those were some of the responses we were getting from parents. The last resort that we used our resource officer, Chief Waller, and he actually made a couple of home visits for us for students and parents that we couldn't contact at all. So those are 5 tiers where we attempted to contact parents and students to let them know the progress of their children, as well as if they were attending class regularly or not. Now, here you see Okay, I think we're good now. Swag Cobras, and you know, when we're dealing with young folks in education, you know, they love acronyms and they love anything that constitutes them with being quote unquote cool. So we came up with Swag Cobras, and it stands for Students Who Achieve Greatness. We also have a spreadsheet where we asked the teachers to give us those names. That was of that 55% that will log in regularly. And we asked the teachers to do that before Christmas. We had planned on giving the students a Christmas gift for attending, just for incentives. However, that didn't matriculate because we still had students rolling in and we didn't want to omit anyone. So therefore, we still have those names, students and parents who are on this. Students and parents who are on this meeting tonight, we still are going to congratulate those students who were Swag Cobras during that time. And we're gonna do something very nice.
and appreciate everything you all are doing. The next on the agenda is FY 2020-21 school calendar revised action item. Mr. Dixon.
Thank you, Chairman Rouse and Vice Chair Blackshear and fellow board members. We have had a lot of missed opportunity for learning, for teaching and learning. And we have an early dismissal date for February the 11th and a professional learning date for February the 12th. And so it would be my recommendation that if we are able to continue with learning, that we would not have a break in learning on February the 11th and the 12th, that we would revise our calendar to make those student days a full day on the 11th, and we will make that a student and a work day on the 12th for our staff and students. That would be my recommendation, Mr. Chair. And I would like some discussion with our board on that.
Okay, we heard the recommendation from Mr. Dixon. Any discussion on that? In my opinion of that is, I agree with that recommendation. If everything is still safe at that time, I think we should continue while we can. So I don't see no problem with it.
Any other comments from any of our board members?
The same for me. I agree that we keep it moving. And thank you all for your hard work.
Anybody else?
I agree that we should keep it moving.
Thank you.
I agree also.
Thank you.
We need to keep it moving.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Well, we thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dixon, for thinking of that. And we need a motion to revise that calendar per recommendation of Mr. Dixon, Superintendent.
I make that motion.
I couldn't.
Go on, Mr. Rouse, and then I'll second. I'm sorry.
I didn't understand, Ms. Blackshear. She was echoing back. I couldn't understand.
I make that motion.
Okay.
Ms. Blackshear made the motion, Mr. Rouse.
Yeah, I heard that. I heard it then.
Second.
A motion been properly made by Ms. Blackshear and seconded by Ms. Stokes to accept the recommendation of revising the calendar for FY 2020-21 school calendar. Any discussion at this time? All in favor? I know you guys the word aye or waving your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carry unanimous. Next on the agenda is FY 2020-21-22 school calendar overview information item. Rhythm.
Good evening, Chairman Rouse and board members and stakeholders. Today, I already presented to you, sent to you a package that has several calendars from our surrounding districts. This is an information item for you to view the other calendars so you can get an idea of what everyone else is doing. I also sent you a summary of what all those other calendars have on them so you can get an idea of what pre-planning looks like and what all the breaks look like and the end of the school year and the first day of school in the other districts. You'll see that the first day of school for 2 of the districts is on August the 2nd. For 1 of the districts is Tuesday, August the 3rd. 1 is Friday, August the 6th, and 1 is the following week, Tuesday. That's going to be the kind of differences that you have in the first day. Thanksgiving is the same for all of them. Spring breaks are a week in all of them. They're just some of them on different weeks. and the end of the school year is about the same for all of them. So there's just some small changes, but they're there for you to review. This is an information item. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Chair, this is just an information item for today for you all to have to review. We will bring back a couple schedules at our next board meeting of some proposed calendars, and then we will give opportunity for some action items. But these are just some proposed calendars for you all to just look at, and we will bring back some proposed calendars at our next meeting for you all to take some action on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Reardon. Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Any questions from the board members? If not, we move to the next item D, which is federal program budget overview, information item. Ms. Reardon.
Yes, again, good evening. I'm presenting to you an information item about the federal programs budgets, the federal programs that I work with. Mr. Basley is going to be pulling up a presentation. You have a copy of that. While he's doing that, the first federal program that I'm going to start with is Title I. And the purpose of Title I is supplemental instructional services with focusing on improving student achievement. And this program, you must include strategies to support parental involvement as well. These funds are based on the CLIP, the Consolidated LEA Improvement Plan that we do towards the end of this school year. We involve stakeholders in this. We involve teachers, administration, parents, all of those members come together and we come up with the plan as to how we want to improve things here in the district, focus on what needs to be improved and how we're going to do that. And then that's submitted to the state. The state approves that plan. Once the state approves that plan, then it comes back to us. The budget is brought down to us. Once we get the budget, then we determine based on the CLIP how we're going to spend the money to accomplish those things that we had determined were needs as a group in the CLIP. That's how we get to the point that we are with that. In the next slide, you'll see with Title I funds, it's showing you, it's a pie graph on how those funds are split up within the funding sources that we have. You'll see here that we have carryover money for this year. This year, carryover money is what was left over from last year. We normally don't have this much money left over from year to year, but due to COVID and our inability to meet with the students and continue the programs and things that we had going on at the end of the school year last year, the federal government had a waiver for us so that we could carry over all the money that was left over at the end of this, at the time when we went out on COVID, which was $60,277. So with that added to the budget that we were given for this school year, it came to a total of $554,862. With that money, there are specific things that we have to set aside the money for in the beginning. So we have to set aside money for the administration of the grant. It is mandated that we set aside money for parental involvement, for family engagement, all of those activities that go on. And we're going to cover some more about this set aside money later. And then you'll see, and that set aside money for us is $189,435. Then Jeffersonville Elementary, you see, has a bigger piece of the pie than the high school and the middle school have. And we're going to talk about that and how they're utilizing their money in just a moment. Jeffersonville Elementary has $160,114. And the middle school has $73,954. And the high school has $71,082. If you go to the next slide, Mr. Basley. This is how Jeffersonville Elementary has chosen to meet the needs of their school improvement plan and how they have dispersed the money. So with this, I have the categories here that their money is, the budget categories that it has been placed in. And then you can see, looking at the graph, the difference between where they're spending more of their money compared to the other categories. And the figures are there for you on the documentation that was sent to your homes. This disbursement of the money also comes from their school improvement plans, and then how we disperse it and how we budget it is then sent to the state. Now, with the determination of what school gets what money, that's not something that we determine on our own. That is set up by the federal government, has a plan based on poverty and number of students. So the school is based on the number of students in that school and the poverty rate of those specific students in that school. So the middle school has fewer students than the high school, but they have more money than the high school, because based on the students that are in the middle school, the poverty rate is higher among those students than it is in the high school. So when you're looking at Jeffersonville Elementary, they have more money than the middle school and high school to allocate, because it's based on the fact that they have more students within their school. And next slide, Mr. Basley. Then this is the middle school. This again are the categories at the bottom as to how they've dispersed the money. And when we're looking, same thing as it was on the elementary one, you see parapros and the instructional coach, and that includes the salaries and all of the benefits and everything, that the total package that goes with those two categories. It's not just one thing. It's not just salary. It's all of the pieces that goes into that. And it's not their entire salary. It's the portion of time, based on the portion of time in their day that they're spent in each individual school. Then you can see the other categories that they have there. And the middle school's total money was $73,954. Next slide, please, Mr. Basling. And this is the high school and how they've allocated their money. And again, it's based on their school improvement plan. That is submitted to the state. They approve that, and then they approve the budget once it is gone. And all of this has been approved before we start dispersing any money out of these categories. Next slide, please, Mr. Basling. The carryover funds, which was $60,277 from last school year, that carries into this school year. And we're going to use these funds to support a summer learning program. We're looking to fill the gaps that have been caused by COVID-19. And we will be paying staff members, pay for the transportation of the students into the school, curriculum that we will be using for remediation, and to purchase any supplies that we will need. And as we get closer to that, we will have a more specific budget with that, but it will be approved by the state as well. Next slide, please. And this is the set aside funds, which we said was $189,435. This is how it's split up. It's with administrative costs, family engagement, the cost of auditing this grant, and this specific grant only, the indirect cost as a result of this grant, and we are required to set aside a specific amount of money for homeless students through our McKinney-Vento Act. Next slide, please. The next grant that we have is the Title IIA grant, and this grant is to increase student achievement, but we're increasing student achievement in this grant by enhancing the teacher and principal quality through professional development, recruitment, hiring, and retention. And it is specific on the categories that we can use. It must fall within these categories. Our budget is $58,041 for this school year. We had carryover money again from last school year due to us not completing the year due to COVID. Our total budget for this school year, then, money that we can spend this year, is $65,655. Mr. Baslin. Thank you. This is the Title IIA, the categories of money down at the bottom, how it's allocated, and the amounts that we put into place. Again, this is based on our CLIP that was approved by the state. And then it's also to meet those needs in that CLIP. This is how we are dispersing that money. it also includes audit costs and indirect costs that are specific to this grant only. The recruitment travel and recruitment fees are to go to those recruitment fairs because most of the time there is a fee for us to attend those recruitment fairs. And so this includes the travel and that may be incurred for that and the fees that may be incurred to go to those fairs. Next slide, please. Title III is another pot of money. However, Twiggs County does not receive any money in this category. It is for our ESOL students, our English speakers of other languages. You may hear them being called ELL students, English language learners. We have no funds due to low numbers. There is a minimum. You have to have a minimum of 72 students in order to receive these funds, but we're still required by the state and the federal government to serve these students. So we participate in a consortium. The consortium is with Crawford County, Jasper County, and Jones counties. And so we pool the numbers of students that all of these counties have together to get to that 72 student minimum. And then the county that has the largest number of students, which in this case is Jasper out of all of these, then Jasper is the manager of this grant. We meet together to determine how the money is being utilized. And so we tell them what needs we have. They make sure we have the categories and the funds to meet the needs of our ESOL students. Currently, we have one ESOL student, and we are serving him and utilizing the funds that we have available through this consortium to serve this student. Next category, please. Next slide, I'm sorry. This last one is the Title 5B. It's the Rural Education Initiative. And obviously from the title, it is for rural communities, which is what we are in Twiggs County. It's to assist us in barriers that we might have compared to a metropolitan area or compared to a more populated area. So we are able to utilize this money to help us utilize our other money to meet the needs of our students so we can effectively improve the quality of instruction for students who live in a rural area. So it's provided for us to serve these concentrations of children, which for us is our entire student body because we all live in a rural community. The total in this grant is $16,592. Last year, we had a carryover from this grant of $1,410, and we last year we utilized this for purchasing Chromebooks, and so we could still do that as well. And at the moment, it is to utilize for Chromebooks if needed or to be used during our summer program. We have not completely allocated this money at this time because we're waiting to see what our needs are as our students come back and as we get closer to the end of the school year. That's traditionally what we've done with this money is we kind of hold it back so we can meet needs that other funds may not have been able to meet at that time. And that's the end of the federal programs presentation. Do you have any questions?
There's no question from Ms. Rhythm.
Ms. Cheney, your microphone is off.
Okay, the 129,688 for the parapros, is that to pay just salaries?
That pays salaries and benefits, and it covers covers multiple parapros. It at the elementary school, it is taking care of 4 paraprofessionals.
Okay.
Any more questions?
And I would like to say that we had basically cut out most of our parapros because most of the parapros were funded locally. We don't have any parapros that are funded locally. All of our parapros are funded through Title I. And we saw that as a need. We did not have parapros in kindergarten any longer. And there was just we saw that as a big need. Most of our board members remember that that was just a big struggle for us. And most of those pairs are in our lower grades, in our early grades, and we fund them through Title I.
Okay, thank you. And I figured that's what it was for, but sometimes we have to be a little more specific for others, because when I
Sure.
saw the amount, I just wanted to know.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
That's why, as I was presenting it, that's why I wanted to try to make sure that it was understood that it includes benefits, which is almost as much as the salary itself.
And I know.
As a matter of fact, the insurance cost is more than the salary.
Yes.
Thank you. That was great. Thanks.
And these parapros are utilized because we have a big initiative for literacy, and that's the focus of every parapro at every school is literacy. That in some form or fashion, they are touching literacy in as they are working with our students.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions for Ms. Rhythm? Thank you, Ms. Rhythm.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
You too. Next on the agenda is item E, teacher contract deadline information item, Mr. Dixon, Mr. Austin.
Thank you, Mr. Rouse. Once again, this is going to be a very brief introduction. Just want to put it on your hearts and your minds as we're talking about teacher contracts. We have already sent out our intent forms to give our staff an opportunity, those that intend to remain with us, those that intend to retire for this fiscal year. We did that electronically this year due to COVID. We did it through a Google form, and we have received that piece of information back. Our contract is done in phases. So before we get into our contract period, we wanted to just have some dialogue with our board to get us prepared that we will have a contract timeline so that our staff will know that contracts will be forthcoming. But as we are in a period of transition, there will be some dialogue with the change of helm as it relates to contracts. So the contracts are on our minds and that contracts will be forthcoming, but we are in a period with some discussion. So we just wanted to make sure that we were making our staff and our stakeholders aware that we do have a timeline for our contracts, but we are in a period of transition, and that to let them know that contracts will be forthcoming, but it will just be in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon.
Question.
Go ahead.
So the letter of intents have gone out. Is that what you said? Okay. And usually around the timeline for contracts to be back in, is it April?
Well, the old deadline used to be April 15th.
Okay.
That was the old deadline, was that you had to make an offer or receive or reject an offer by April 15th. Okay. But what we want to do is we want to get our contracts out and get them back as soon as possible, because we want to get the cream of the crop, not what's left of the crop. And so in the near future, as we go through our transition process and there's opportunity for dialogue, we'll be getting them out and trying to get them back.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions?
Yes. Is there an estimated timeline? Or okay, well, you just said that there will be some dialogue, but if I was a teacher, I would want to know around the 1st of March.
Yes.
Okay.
1st of March, we will hopefully get the contracts out with an expectation to have them back by mid-March.
Thank you. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Cheney. Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Any more questions? If not, we move on to the next item on the agenda. It would be item F. It'll be CARES funding update. Information item, Mr. Austin.
Thank you, Mr. Rouse. Good evening, board chair, vice chair, board members, constituents of the community, Superintendent Dixon. We've had a great time these past couple of days looking at more opportunities and more money. It's always a pleasure, especially during a time like this in the pandemic, to receive great news. And the federal government, the state agencies have found an opportunity to provide us 4 times the original amount of money that were originally allocated in our CARES money. So we have a lot to be excited for and about with that news that came to us. So next slide, please. This looks like, just to talk about the purpose, is that initially this was a multi-trillion-dollar stimulus package and billions of dollars were allocated to us. And so if you go to the next slide, Mr. Basley, out of that billions of dollars that were allocated to the state agencies, the next slide, please. We received $1,636,623. Our original allocation that we received was $400,376, which is a little more, about 4 times as much. So they did honor their promise with that. So we are excited for that. Now, one of the things that I looked at, one of my questions was, could we use the remaining funds from our first allocation to accompany the new allocation? And that was a yes. So with that being in mind, our total allocation that we have, including what we have remaining from our first allocation, is $1,874,240.69. So we do have an additional resource to tap into. If you go to the next slide, Mr. Basley. Okay, the screen is going off. Okay, so what's allowable? So at this particular point, at-risk student populations, and this is what we can spend the money on or for. Also, distant remote learning. We've already experienced us using Edgenuity and other platforms in order to educate our scholars in a virtual learning atmosphere. School meals. We have to ensure that the students are being fed and they're getting those resources. So anything to offset costs associated with providing school meals. Mental and physical health, ensuring that we have all of the needs, psychological and emotional services to provide to our students in that particular category. Supplemental learning and addressing learning loss, facilities and equipment. The principal have talked about some of the equipment they have to ensure that we are utilizing social distance requirement and that we're sanitizing the buildings. So some of that money has been allocated for that category. And we want to make sure that our core staff and our services are maintained. So we're able to use the money for that as well. Next slide. So some of the key highlights in the CARES 2 can be used for all schools and programs in the district. Most federal money is allocated for a particular school or a particular function, but we have a lot of flexibility with this particular pot of money. The funds do not need to be allocated to each school based upon the formula. If you hear from the Title I presentation, depends on how many students you have, it may equal a certain amount of money, but this is not the case. And one of the more important things is that the funds are retroactive to March 13th, 2020. Anything that occurred COVID related, we're able to recoup that money from that time period. So that helps our general budget, especially tremendously, ensuring that we're replacing those funds that we expended to ensure our students were safe and our stakeholders. And lastly, equitable services are not required under this particular CARES. And what this means, in the first CARES, we had to share this money with private institutions or academies within a certain geographical area. This time, the money will solely belong to the Title I funding that we need for our students and our stakeholders. So that's a great thing that we're able to maintain the resources that we need in-house this time. Next slide. All right, and as we go through this budget process, we're going to be very inclusive of this money to ensure that we're offsetting costs and continue to get the feedback from the stakeholders to ensure that we're using this money until it's expended. And we have until 2023, September 30th, 2023 to be exact, until this money is actually supposed to be up for expiration. So we have quite a bit of time with this. Any questions or concerns?
Question.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
so what's the plan for these funds? Is there a plan that has been put in place to be?
That's a great question.
Mhm.
Great question. Based upon the categories, we're going to plan around that. We just received the news of this within the past 2 weeks, so we wanted to share with the board first, and get any input from you all if any was desired, and come back to the table and come with a plan in our budget season. And we're going to talk about that as well and more in depth in the budget calendar. But that's a great lead in for us to set a timeline for expectations for that.
Okay, and what is the core staff?
Core staff will be teachers. There to be anybody that directly educate the students, central office staff, administration, really everybody, in my opinion, will be core staff. So they define it as one thing, but our definition is everybody that impacts our babies.
Okay. And one more, the students, even for funding for school meals, or will you all be serving students that are still virtual? I know the bus comes through here and serve the lunches. Well, they come about 9:45. Will you all be still doing that for the students that are still doing the virtual learning? Would they still be receiving those meals?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because I really love that. Okay. And that's it, Ms. Dawson.
Thank you, Ms. Cheney.
I have one question. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I know we had talked about the areas, and I know we're back in school, but we still have a lot of kids that are still virtual. Are we still doing anything with the bus? I know you mentioned something about getting the bus with the Wi-Fi to be set up so the kids that cannot get any service, that they'll be able to still get internet service.
Well, we are putting as much Wi-Fi as we possibly can. Those areas that even when we put the bus there with the connectivity that we can provide, some areas, even what we can provide still won't provide because there's no power source for our source to connect to. So we're still struggling in some of those areas, but as many areas as we can, we are in, Ms. Blackshear, and that's a great question. We are in better shape now to help more of our scholars than we've ever been before. We won't leave anybody behind, as many as we cannot. The only way that we won't be able to help somebody, it will be something beyond our control as to where there is absolutely no connectivity. And sad to say, there are a few areas where there is absolutely no connectivity. Now, Mr. Rouse brought in a good solution to that, and we have already put in something in place to help us with that, because we have already, Ms. Reardon, I may have mentioned that to you, that we've already ordered some workbooks and some things to put into those places as well. Now, as I've been talking and meeting with the principals, we are also, one of the things that we've talked about, we didn't have a tangible math curriculum. And as we've now been in a little bit better shape, this might be one of those times as we're going into our budget season that we talk about, we have an ELA curriculum that we might want to look at doing that, because that would put something in our hands that our kids and our parents can be able to work with in the event, because everybody is not technologically savvy. Even though we're moving in that direction, there's still some good for some pencil, paper, and a book sometimes. But that's a great question, Ms. Blackshear.
Any more questions?
And I would like to say that some of our, when we took some of our carryover money that we had and we ordered more computers that we've talked about at our last couple of board meetings. Some of those computers have come in. So we're positioning ourselves to be better already, because we were concerned when we pushed out more of our, Ms. Blackshear, if you remember, we pushed out more of our computers that we did have, but we are already recouping with some newer stuff. And we're going to have to, Mr. Rouse, we will need to look at revising our 2020 CARES Act, 2019 CARES Act monies, because we have about, am I getting ahead of ourselves, Mr. Austin? Well,
No, sir.
yeah. So we're gonna have to look at revising that because we have about 230,000 left of that money, but we need to look at really taking care of our scholars and our teachers to make sure that they're really equipped, because now that we know that we've got some other that we will have to look forward to, but we need to look at revising that budget to make sure that we maximize that money that we do have from that 2019, because we were able to use some of our Title I funds to meet some of the needs that we did have. So we need to look at revising some of that, remembering that we did experience a 17% cut. We experienced a larger cut than most districts across the state did. So we need to keep that in mind. So, but we will have to look at revising that 2019 CARES Act money that we did get. Okay.
All right, and anything else? Now we move to the next item. The item G, budget calendar, information item, Mr. Austin.
All right, thank you. So we've been talking about budgetary items, but historically, and especially since my tenure, making sure that the budget calendar is in depth and it has an instruction focus as we build out what our expectations are and what our resources should look like for the upcoming fiscal year. So I think initially this came in November, but I wanted to revisit this as an information item to just ensure that any other input was not needed before we move forward with it. We've already been talking. I've spoke with administration. I spoke with directors and other key components into our budget, key staff in our budgetary process, and getting their feedback on what programmatic, instructional, technological, operational needs they're anticipating for the upcoming year. And this is very important to start there because oftentimes there are other funding sources such as federal programs that we can use to offset costs. So we've had a very productive conversation to this point. The principals have been extremely helpful in providing their vision, especially in the time that we're in. They have been extremely helpful in that. And so I have a great idea of what that looks like. Now, one of the things that we're anticipating as we look at FTE, as we look at those things, is that, of course, our student population has decreased due to the fact of this the virtual environment and pandemic. And so in the event the state does not hold us harmless, which means that they will not count against our student population decreasing, which means less revenue, we have to plan for that. So we're having conversations about the unexpected. Last year, I thought that we planned for the unexpected, but this was an unexpected thing that happened with the pandemic. So we have to keep moving in a positive direction. So at this particular point in January, we're looking at talking about HR. I think we already brought up the conversation about contracts. We're looking at our practices. We're looking at what type of things we need to be doing in HR to make sure our teachers and those, especially those getting contracts, and our staff feel valued and important, because we want to retain as many as our personnel as possible to keep that culture alive in Twiggs County. So we're looking at those processes now. As we move forward in February, some of the things that we're looking at is finalizing student schedules and not having a concrete schedule, but at least get to the point to where we have an idea where students will be plugged into and what that looks like. The earlier we have our schedules built out, the better. Things to give us an opportunity to plan for contracts better and for us to plan for a budget that has already placed the right people in the right positions. So, and we budget based upon the students, because the student drives revenue. So we're starting with that this year and looking to see great results from that implementation. Again, in February, one of the things that we did last year, we did not do as good of a job personally making sure that the athletic supplements were submitted And I wanted to take more accountability for that. So I wanted to put it on the calendar this year, that there's a submission of all athletic supplements so that we have an opportunity to review and ensure they're included in the budgetary process. That's something that is different this year. That's highlighted this year, that we're going to actually do that earlier. So we have the opportunity to review those things. In March, most of our budget sessions come here because we should be receiving at this particular time QB allotments from the state, a lot of revenue information from the state. A lot of our numbers should be in. We should have our teacher contracts at that time. So we're talking from an administrative standpoint on what we expect this budget to really look like now that we have a lot more information. So March is a very important time for us because we're really making a lot of those decisions with stakeholders' input at that particular time. In red is board action or review. And so I wanted to highlight this because this gives you an opportunity to see when would input from you all would be needed and to prepare you all to ask any questions before any decision has to be made. So on the 9th, if all holds true, we'll review all supplements and salary schedules. It's a practice that we have found to be extremely helpful. We have had opportunity to work through any discrepancies and make sure that everyone is valued and that the scales are reflective of the current day's market. So that will be an opportunity for us to review all our supplements at that time. Going into the 23rd, if times allows and everyone is comfortable, we'll move forward approval of the supplements and salary schedules. And this will be used to actually put in the budget to ensure we have enough funding to cover supplements. Again, so we're moving to April. And let me pause there. Any questions or concerns? Because I don't want to have you lose any comments you have. Okay. So as we move into April, we have the budget overview. At this time, I normally provide what the budget potentially looks like and give you opportunity to provide feedback in that process. Again, there's another red item. This is where we presented a tentative budget and any tax digest projections at this time. It's very early because I want to have the opportunity for all stakeholders to participate in this process. That's very important in the budgetary process. Buy in because you want to ensure that everyone understands where our resources are going, especially our taxpayers and those who granted us supervision and stewardship over the funds. And as we move forward in May, we will look to seek approval. Now, this builds some cushion in our timeline because if anything comes up, if we need extra time to review, we have enough time because we have to have the budget approved by June 30th. However, we have to advertise the budget in enough time in order for us to meet our state laws and mandates as it relates to transparency. So that gives us enough time to do those things. Normally, the tax digest is prepared the first week in August. The tax commissioner and I, we work together in ensuring that we have all that met, and we'll be presenting the tax digest in the month of August for approval. As it stands, this is what our current budget calendar looks like. Are there any questions or concerns about the budget calendar?
Mr. Austin, there are just a few things in it that I would like to bring to Mr. Rouse's attention and see if he would like to bring it back to your attention.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Any other comments or concerns?
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Austin.
Yes, sir.
Next on the agenda, FY 2020 December financial report, action item, Mr. Austin.
All right. So every month we'll bring forth a financial report, cash-based financial report that reflects everything that's happening within that month. And so what you have before you is actual versus what's been budgeted for FY21. December is a great time in most public districts because the tax revenue is normally received, majority of it is received in this particular time. One thing about the budget and the way we receive our funds is more of a cash flow concerning it. We'll go through a couple of months to where it seems as if we're spending so much money and we're not providing enough revenue to match that. But in the general budget, it's all about cash flow. And one of the things that we look at in December, January, we see a lot of our tax revenue come in, and that's reflected here. So at this particular point, we've received 69% of our revenue, received a lot of our bigger checks this month, last month in December. One thing I can say that despite us being in a pandemic and having constraints, we have done extremely well with our budget. We haven't had any moments to where we was unsure about any payments, about payroll, about any other operational needs. We have been very confident and comfortable in this budget season. So I'm very excited to see the progress that we've done, and especially thanking the administration just for their support and ensuring that we're adhering to our goals we set. And so line item by line item, we are doing extremely well. We're pacing about 54%, and we're about halfway through our budget. So our expenditures is on pace with how much we should be spending over the year. And we added this month 1.1 mil to the fund balance. And only thing that means in this particular point is that we had that much more in revenue than expenditures. So great month as anticipated in December. Any questions, concerns about the December 31st, 2020 report?
No questions?
For as our TAN, have we already taken care of that?
Yes, ma'am. We paid that the first week of December. It was due December 31st, 2020.
Okay, great.
Yes, ma'am.
And did we utilize all of our TAN?
No, sir. We did not.
What percentage of it did we utilize this year?
About 70% we utilized this year. We drew everything down just in case, but we did not need the full amount. So we came out good with that.
Any more questions? Mr. Dixon, what's your recommendation?
Mr. Chair, I will seek approval for our December financial report, December 31st, 2020.
We got a recommendation from the superintendent concerning the FY 2020 December financial report. Do I have a motion?
I make that motion.
I second it.
That motion been properly made by Ms. Blackshear, seconded by Mr. Stevens, to approve the recommendation from the superintendent concerning the FY 2020 December financial report. Any discussion at this time? All in favor, move by aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
That I didn't see you, Miss. Can't see you, Miss Blackshear.
Aye.
That motion carry unanimous. That's all on our agenda. Next is executive session. Can I get a motion to exit regular session and move into executive session?
Chairman Rouse, I make that motion that we move into executive session at this time.
I second the motion.
That motion been properly made by Ms. Cheney and seconded by Mr. Stevens that we will exit the regular section and enter into executive session at this time. Any questions? All in favor, I know you by aye or raising your hand.
Aye. Aye.
That motion carry unanimous.
Thank you.
Sure missed my chicken wings, Mr. Dixon.
Did you? Well, girl, you know I should have put 3 in my pocket and
executive session into regular session. May I get a motion that we enter back into regular session?
I'll make that motion that we enter back into regular session.
Second.
That motion been properly made by Ms. Cheney and seconded by Ms. Blackshear that we exit executive session and enter back into regular session. Any question at this time? All in favor? I know you by raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carried unanimous. In executive session, we discussed the superintendent search, which is moving along quite well. I like to say personally that I appreciate what each board member is doing to support this. I think we're making good strides. And also in executive session, we have a recommendation from the superintendent for resignation of CID 3800, 3801, and 3802. What do I hear about in response to that?
Mr. Chair, I would like to make the motion to accept the 3 resignations.
Second.
That motion was properly made by Ms. Blackshear and seconded by Mr. Stevens to accept the resignation of CID 3800 and CID 3801 and CID 3802. Any questions? Any discussion at this time? All in favor? I know you by aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
The motion carried unanimous. That being all, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion that we adjourn.
Second it. That motion, the motion been properly made by Ms. Stokes and seconded by Mr. Stevens that this meeting will stand adjourned. All in favor? I know you by aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
That motion carried unanimous. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.